So for the week, we wound up with 316.75.
It was a necessary sacrifice.
Season total, 2838.85.
For years, Chris Doumit was the quiet engine behind Parker Schnabel's record-breaking success. He was the master of the gold room, the man who ensured not a single flake was lost. But behind his calm demeanor, a secret was eating away at him. It wasn't just the back-breaking labor of running 3 wash plants. It was a growing sense of betrayal. At 71, he's finally breaking his silence to reveal the explosive truth about his exit. A story of disrespect and a final showdown that forced him to choose between a fortune in gold and his own self-worth.
We're running out of time. We're down to 1 plant. But, you know, if you guys can keep her going and the ground holds up and the weather.
A goal that broke a legend. It all started with an announcement that was, to put it mildly, insane. Standing before his exhausted crew under the pale Yukon sun, a young Parker Schnabel laid out a goal so audacious it sounded like a fantasy. This wasn't just about having a good season. It was about smashing every record ever set. The target was a mind-boggling 10,000 ounces of gold. To put that in perspective, that's over 600 pounds of pure gold. At the time, that much gold was worth well over $12 million. It was a king's ransom, a treasure that could set them all up for life. But the thing nobody tells you about a goal that big is the sheer, earth-shattering amount of work it requires.
Trucks is that truck that holds 25 yards loose is probably only packing like 15 yards. Whereas these things, you know, probably pushing like 35 yards.
To hit that number, Parker made a call that would push his entire operation, and one man in particular, past the breaking point. He decided to run 3 massive wash plants at once. You see, this had never been tried before. Not on this scale, not with this much on the line. There was Big Red, the reliable workhorse that had been with them for years. Then there was Slucifer, the massive, custom-built flagship plant that was the heart of the operation. And finally, there was the new monster. A colossal plant capable of chewing through hundreds of cubic yards of frozen earth every single hour.
Thanks for getting this done. It's a nice setup. I like the plant. I know there's always going to be a few quirks to work out, but I like it so far.
Well, she's going to take some fine-tuning, but it's washing rocks.
3 plants meant 3 torrents of pay dirt, 3 streams of raw material pouring into one tiny room at the heart of the claim, the gold room. And in that room, there was only one man trusted to handle the cleanup for all of them, Chris Doumit. The gold room is the most critical part of any mining operation. It's where tons of worthless gravel and mud are meticulously separated from the precious few ounces of gold hiding within. It's a job that requires the precision of a surgeon and the patience of a saint. The most shocking fact is that a mistake of even 1% in recovery efficiency could mean the loss of over $100,000 over a season.
When it gets a whipping, it goes crazy and somebody could actually get hurt by the thing. Think of a fire hose this big around, right? I mean, it just...
For years, this room was Chris's sanctuary. He was the master, the man whose steady hands and keen eye were the final guardians of Parker's fortune. He had been with Parker since the beginning, a mentor figure who brought decades of experience and a calming presence to the high-stakes chaos of the Klondike. When Chris heard the plan to run 3 plants, he knew it was impossible. He finally revealed in a recent interview, "I just stared at him. Processing the material from 2 plants was already a 16-hour-a-day job. 3? It wasn't just more work. It was mathematically impossible for one person." But Parker's ambition was a force of nature. It left no room for doubt or discussion. The math was brutal, triple the workload, but the same 24 hours in a day. The pressure was immense. Every single cleanup from each of the 3 plants had to be perfect. One slip-up, one moment of exhaustion, and tens of thousands of dollars in gold could be washed away forever, lost back to the creek. It wasn't just about money, it was about the work of the entire crew. A bad cleanup meant that the dangerous, back-breaking labor of dozens of people out in the field had been for nothing, and all of that weight fell directly onto Chris's 71-year-old shoulders. What many overlooked was Chris's unwavering loyalty. For nearly a decade, he had been the silent foundation upon which Parker built his empire. He never complained. He just got the job done. But this season was different. This wasn't a challenge, it was a punishment. But not all things are what they seem, And this impossible goal was just the beginning of the story. Desperate gamble. The season started, and the relentless flood of material began. Chris was buried. "I was working 18-hour days, 7 days a week," he recounted. "I'd fall onto my bunk, too tired to even take my boots off, and be up again before the sun rose. My hands started to shake from the constant detailed work and the lack of sleep." The change in him was noticeable to everyone on the crew. The calm, humorous mentor who used to share stories and advice was gone. In his place was a grim, silent figure, moving like a machine, his focus narrowed to one single thing: survival. The joy was gone, replaced by the grim determination of a man just trying to keep his head above water. Many people are crazy about the glamour of gold mining, but they never see the human cost. The first major crack in the foundation appeared during a week of catastrophic breakdowns. A key piece of machinery failed, causing a massive backup of unprocessed material from all 3 plants. The piles of concentrate, the heavy gold-rich material, grew into a small mountain outside the gold room. For Chris, it was a nightmare made real. He worked for over 24 hours straight, a marathon of intense focus, fueled by nothing but coffee and sheer willpower. He only stopped when his hands were trembling so violently he could no longer handle the delicate scales used to weigh the gold. For the first time in his long career, Chris Doumit had to admit defeat. He walked over to Parker's trailer, his body aching, and said 3 words he had never said before: "I need help." Parker's response, while practical, revealed the fundamental disconnect that was growing between them. He told Chris to pull someone from the field to help in the gold room. But who? Every single person was essential to keeping the 3 hungry wash plants fed. Taking a rock truck driver or an excavator operator off their machine would create a new bottleneck, slowing down the entire operation. It was like trying to patch one hole in a sinking boat by creating another. Chris suggested Tatiana Costa, a highly skilled operator. The problem? She had 0 experience in the delicate science of gold recovery. It was a massive gamble. "Tatiana is a fantastic worker, one of the best," Chris acknowledged. "But gold processing isn't something you can learn in an afternoon. It takes years to develop the feel for it. You see, one wrong move, one valve turned the wrong way, and an entire cleanup worth hundreds of thousands of dollars could be washed down the drain. The decision was made to train her, but the damage was done." To Chris, the message was crystal clear. Parker's 10,000-ounce goal was more important than the health and well-being of his most loyal and experienced crew member. He wasn't a partner, he was a tool. The thing nobody tells you is that physical exhaustion is often just a symptom of a much deeper problem. What Chris revealed next showed that the real issue wasn't the workload, it was about a total lack of respect. And this feeling would soon lead to an explosive confrontation that would end his career on Gold Rush forever. His breaking point was fast approaching, and it would be far more dramatic than anyone could have imagined. The price of a soul. The final straw had nothing to do with shaking hands or sleepless nights. The most shocking fact is that the secret Chris kept for all these years was about a bitter dispute over money and respect. As he processed cleanup after cleanup, watching hundreds of thousands, then millions of dollars pile up, a deep-seated frustration began to boil inside him. He was the one turning Parker's dirt into a fortune, yet he felt his compensation didn't reflect his incredible value to the operation. He wasn't just an employee, he was the master craftsman who made the entire business profitable, and he was being treated like a disposable part. The confrontation happened on a cold, rainy evening. The steady drumming of water on the metal roof of Parker's office trailer was the only sound as Chris walked in, his mind made up. He had just finished a massive cleanup that pushed their gold total into record territory, but he felt no pride, only a cold, burning resentment. He stood before Parker, who was hunched over a laptop, and spoke directly. "We need to talk about how the profits are being shared." Parker looked up, a flicker of surprise in his eyes. In all their years together, Chris had never been so direct about finances. Parker's response was dismissive. "We're breaking records, Chris. Everyone is benefiting." "Everyone?" Chris's voice was quiet, but it cut through the air like a knife. What followed was a tense, heated argument that exposed a canyon-sized gap between their philosophies. Chris argued from a place of fairness. He believed that the extraordinary success should be shared with the people who made it possible. the crew who risked their safety and sacrificed their health. Parker, however, saw things from the perspective of a young boss who had taken all the financial risks. The vision was his. The millions of dollars in equipment were his. The crew were well-paid employees, but nothing more. Then, Parker said the two words that would shatter their relationship forever. Frustrated and losing his patience, he looked Chris dead in the eye and said, "You're replaceable." The statement hung in the air, cold and brutal. After a decade of unwavering loyalty, after teaching Parker so much of what he knew, after being the bedrock of his operation, Chris was being told he was just another cog in the machine. He could be swapped out if he became too much trouble. In that single moment, Chris later revealed, "I realized it was over. I wasn't a partner. I wasn't even a valued friend anymore. I was just a piece of equipment that was expected to run until it broke down." What many overlooked is that this wasn't just about a paycheck. It was a fundamental betrayal of trust and respect. It was the moment a mentor realized his student saw him not as a person, but as an asset to be exploited. Chris Doumit walked out of that trailer a changed man. He knew he could no longer work for someone who held him in such low regard. He was done. But his departure would be carefully managed, spun into a story that protected the show and its star. A return to roots. Chris's decision to leave sent a shockwave through the camp, but the story presented to the world was a masterclass in public relations. The network and Parker's team went into damage control. The narrative of burnout and retirement was born. It was a simple, clean explanation that allowed everyone to save face. "They needed a story that honored my time there without making anyone look bad," Chris explained. "The truth about being treated like I was disposable, about the fight over profits, that didn't fit the family-friendly image of the show." Press releases were written and interviews were carefully managed to steer clear of the explosive truth. And you can see this everywhere in entertainment. The real story is often buried to protect the brand. The thing is, the departure of one man had a massive ripple effect. The crew's morale plummeted. They had just witnessed the most respected man on the claim, a legend in his own right, being pushed out. The message was chilling. If it could happen to Chris Doumit, it could happen to any of them. The family atmosphere that Parker had cultivated for years evaporated, replaced by a more transactional, uneasy feeling. People started looking over their shoulders, wondering if they were the next ones to be deemed replaceable. More importantly, the operation's bottom line took a direct hit. Without Chris's decades of expertise in the gold room, recovery efficiency dropped. Small, almost invisible mistakes started adding up, and thousands of dollars in fine gold were lost with every cleanup. Parker could replace the man, but he couldn't replace the mastery. "He tried to downplay my importance after I left," Chris noted, but the gold totals told the real story. For Chris, walking away wasn't an ending. It was a return to himself. He went back to his first love, carpentry. In the quiet of his workshop, surrounded by the smell of sawdust, he found the peace and respect that had been stolen from him in the Klondike. "Working with wood again, it reminded me of what real craftsmanship is," he shared. "It's about patience and quality. It's about creating something of value with your own two hands, not just feeding a machine." People wondered if he regretted leaving a multi-million-dollar operation. His answer was profound. "You can't put a price on your self-worth. I found something more valuable than gold." Looking back, Chris views his time in the Yukon as a hard-learned lesson. Parker built an empire, but at a cost he may not have understood at the time. The most important lesson wasn't about mining. It was about humanity. For people watching the show, Chris's story became an inspiration. It was proof that it's never too late to stand up for your own dignity, even if it means walking away from a fortune. At 71, Chris Doumit finally told his secret not for revenge, but for the truth. He wanted the millions of fans who had invested in his journey to know that he didn't quit. He chose himself. In the end, the quiet craftsman from the gold room found the one treasure that truly matters: peace. Chris Doumit chose his dignity over gold. But in such a high-stakes world, was Parker Schnabel's ruthless focus the only way to succeed? Let us know your thoughts below. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more hidden stories.